The helicopter blade screamed above the mountains as Staff Sergeant Maya Collins pressed herself against the cold rock face. Her radio crackled with static, then silence. Below her position, enemy fighters swept through the valley like ants, their voices carrying on the wind. She checked her rifle, 3 rounds left. 3 rounds between her and whatever came next. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. It hadn't supposed to end like this. 48 hours earlier, Maya had been laughing with her team at Forward Operating Base Viper, a small American outpost nestled in the jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush. She was a combat medic with the Army's 4th Infantry Division, 26 years old, and on her 2nd deployment to Afghanistan. The mission seemed routine: transport medical supplies to a remote village, provide basic health care, and return before sunset. Simple. Safe. Her team leader, Sergeant First Class James Parker, had briefed them that morning. 6 soldiers would make the trip in 2 armored vehicles. The route had been cleared just days before. Intelligence showed minimal enemy activity in the sector. In and out, Parker had said, slapping Maya on the shoulder. We'll be back in time for movie night. Maya had smiled at that. Movie night meant watching scratchy DVDs on a laptop in the recreation tent, but it was something to look forward to. She'd packed her medical bag carefully, double-checking her supplies. Bandages, tourniquets, antibiotics, pain medication, everything a combat medic needed to save lives. The convoy rolled out at 9:30 a.m., wheels crunching over the Rocky Mountain Road. Maya sat in the back of the lead vehicle with Parker and 2 other soldiers. Private First Class Danny Wright, a kid from Ohio who talked constantly about his girlfriend back home, and Specialist Marcus Johnson, a quiet guy from Detroit who kept a photo of his daughter taped inside his helmet. The village was 2 hours away, accessible only by a narrow road that wound through mountain passes and across dried riverbeds. Maya watched the landscape roll by, endless brown peaks, scattered patches of green where water collected, the occasional shepherd with his flock. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. They reached the village at 11:45 a.m. The elders greeted them warmly, and Maya set up a makeshift clinic in the shade of a mud brick building. For 3 hours she treated patients, an old man with infected wounds on his feet, a pregnant woman who needed prenatal vitamins, children with respiratory infections, basic problems that could turn deadly out here, far from proper medical care. By 3:15 p.m., they distributed all the supplies and treated everyone who needed help. Parker gave the order to pack up and head home. Maya remembered feeling satisfied as she secured her medical bag. Another successful mission. More lives helped. The ambush hit them 15 minutes after they left the village. The explosion came first, a massive IED buried in the road that lifted the rear vehicle into the air and flipped it onto its side. Maya's ears rang from the blast as their driver slammed on the brakes. Then the gunfire started, pouring in from the rocks above like deadly rain. Contact right. Contact right. Parker was shouting into the radio, returning fire through the window. Maya grabbed her rifle, her training taking over. She could see muzzle flashes in the rocks, dozens of them. This wasn't a small group. This was a coordinated attack by a large enemy force. The radio crackled with desperate voices. The overturned vehicle's crew was screaming for help. 2 were injured, trapped inside. The enemy fire was too heavy to reach them. We need to move, Parker yelled. We can't stay here. But where could they go? The road was blocked behind them by the burning vehicle. Ahead, more enemies were appearing, cutting off their escape. They were surrounded. The next 10 minutes were chaos. Maya fired at targets she could barely see, changed magazines, fired again. Bullets pinged off their vehicle's armor. The windshield spiderweb cracked. Danny took a round through the shoulder and screamed. Maya dragged him down, applied pressure to the wound even as she kept shooting with her other hand. Then came the RPG, rocket-propelled grenade that hit their engine block and turned the vehicle into a death trap. Black smoke poured from the hood. Everybody out. Move, move, move! Parker kicked open his door and tumbled into the dirt, firing as he moved. Maya pulled Danny out, Marcus right behind her. They ran for the only cover available, a cluster of boulders 30 yards from the road. Bullets kicked up dust at their feet. Maya's lungs burned. Danny was dead weight, semi-conscious, bleeding through her hasty bandage. They made it to the rocks. Maya immediately started working on Danny while Marcus and Parker laid down covering fire. The wound was bad. The bullet had shattered his collarbone and possibly nicked an artery. She packed the wound, applied a tourniquet, gave him morphine. "Base, this is Eagle 2. Parker was screaming into the radio. "We are under heavy attack.
Multiple casualties.
We need air support now." The radio hissed back. "Eagle 2, air support is 30 minutes out. Can you hold position?" 30 minutes might as well have been 30 years. The enemy was closing in, bounding from rock to rock, getting closer. Maya could hear them shouting to each other in Pashto. "We need to fall back to higher ground," Marcus said, pointing to a ridge above them. "We stay here, we die here." Parker nodded grimly. "Maya, can he move?" She looked at Danny. He was pale, going into shock. Moving him might kill him. Staying would definitely kill all of them. "We have to try," she said. What happened next became a blur in Maya's memory. They moved in stages, leapfrogging from cover to cover while the enemy pursued. Parker was hit in the leg but kept moving. Marcus carried Danny on his back, grunting with effort. Maya provided covering fire, her rifle getting hot in her hands. They made it to the ridge just as helicopter gunships appeared in the sky. Beautiful Apache attack helicopters that rained hell on the enemy positions. The fighters scattered, disappearing into caves and crevices, but it wasn't over. A medevac helicopter landed to evacuate Danny and Parker. As Maya helped load them aboard, more enemy fighters appeared, firing from a new position. The helicopter pilot shouted that they were overweight. They could take the wounded, but not everyone. "Go." Maya yelled at Marcus. "Get them out of here." Maya, "No, that's an order, go." The helicopter lifted off and Maya ran. She ran uphill, away from the road, into the mountains. Bullets chased her. She ran until her legs gave out, until she collapsed behind a rock outcropping high above the valley floor. That's where she was now, 24 hours later, with 3 bullets left and no way home. Maya's first night alone on the mountain was the longest of her life. She'd found a small cave, barely more than a crack in the rocks, and wedged herself inside. Below, she could see enemy campfires dotting the valley. They were searching for her, she knew. An American soldier alone in the mountains was valuable, either as a hostage or a propaganda victory. She rationed her water, 1 small sip every hour from her half-empty canteen. Her food was gone, given to Danny during their escape. She had her medical supplies, her pistol with 1 magazine, her rifle with 3 rounds, and a combat knife. That was it. The temperature dropped as night fell. Maya's uniform was designed for desert heat, not mountain cold. She shivered violently, trying to stay quiet. Every sound seemed amplified. Loose rocks skittering down slopes, wind whistling through gaps in the stone, distant voices speaking Pashto. She tried her radio periodically but got only static. The mountains blocked transmission. To call for help, she'd need to reach higher ground or get closer to friendly positions. Both options meant exposing herself. As dawn broke on her second day, Maya made a decision. She couldn't stay here. Without food or water, she'd be too weak to move within another day. She needed to head north, toward where she thought the base might be. It was at least 20 miles through enemy-controlled territory, but it was her only chance. She moved during the day, using the sun to navigate. Avoid the valleys where enemies patrolled. Stay on the high ground. Move slowly, carefully. She was trained in escape and evasion, but training and reality were different things. By noon, she'd covered maybe 3 miles. Her lips were cracked from thirst. Her vision swam. She found a small stream and drank deeply, knowing it might make her sick, but having no choice. The water was ice cold and tasted like minerals. That's when she saw them. 4 enemy fighters were moving along the slope below her, searching. They moved systematically, checking caves and rock formations. They knew she was out here. They weren't giving up. Maya pressed herself flat against the ground, barely breathing. They were 200 yards away and moving closer. She checked her rifle, still 3 rounds. Her pistol had 15. If they found her, she'd fight. But against 4 trained fighters, her chances were minimal. The men kept searching, getting closer. 100 yards. 50 yards. Maya's hand tightened on her rifle. Her finger found the trigger. Then a voice called out from below, urgent and commanding. The 4 fighters stopped, listened, then turned and hurried back down the mountain. Maya exhaled slowly. Whatever that call had been, it had saved her life. She waited an hour before moving again, then pushed north. Her legs were weak. Every step was an effort. She thought about her mother back in Texas, wondered if anyone had told her that Maya was missing. She thought about Danny and Parker, hoped they'd made it. She thought about Marcus, the photo of his daughter. The second night was worse than the first. Maya found no shelter, just a depression between rocks where she curled up and tried to conserve warmth. She was beyond cold now, beyond tired. Her body was shutting down. She thought about giving up. Just staying here, letting it end. It would be easy. So easy. But then she remembered her first day of combat medic training. Her instructor, a grizzled sergeant with 3 tours in Iraq, had told them something she'd never forgotten. In war, the difference between living and dying often comes down to one thing. Do you quit or do you keep fighting? Even when there's no logical reason to keep fighting, you fight anyway. Because miracles happen to people who refuse to quit. Maya decided she wouldn't quit. Not yet. Day 3 began with Maya barely able to stand. She'd covered maybe 12 miles total, which meant 8 more to go at least. She had no food. Her water was gone again. Her lips bled when she tried to speak, but she kept moving. Around 10:30 a.m., she heard helicopters. American helicopters from the sound. Blackhawks flying a search pattern. They were looking for her. She tried to signal them, waving her arms, but they were too far away. They didn't see her. She kept climbing toward higher ground, thinking if she could reach the peak ahead, maybe she could signal the next patrol. Her progress was measured in yards now, not miles. Every step took monumental effort. That's when she heard voices behind her. More fighters still hunting. They were closer this time, close enough that she could hear their words even though she couldn't understand the language. Maya found a defensive position between 2 large rocks and took stock. 2 rounds in her rifle now. She'd used one to kill a wild dog that tried to attack her during the night. 15 rounds in her pistol. Her knife. If they found her here, this is where she'd make her stand. The voices grew closer. Maya's heart pounded. She raised her rifle, sighting down the barrel at the approach. Her hands were steady despite everything. If nothing else, she'd been well trained. A figure appeared around the rocks. A young fighter, maybe 20 years old, carrying an AK-47. He hadn't seen her yet. He was looking down, following tracks. Her tracks. Maya's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot, center mass. She could do it. Had to do it. The fighter looked up. Their eyes met. For a split second, they just stared at each other. Maya saw surprise in his face, then fear. He was reaching for his rifle when Maya fired. The shot echoed across the mountains. The fighter went down. His companions shouted in alarm, and suddenly bullets were flying everywhere, chipping rocks, ricocheting off stone. Maya returned fire with her pistol, not aiming, just shooting to keep their heads down. She was moving backward, scrambling uphill, using every bit of cover. A bullet grazed her arm, burning like fire. Another hit her pack. She reached a narrow gap between rocks and squeezed through, then kept climbing. Behind her, the fighters were following, shouting to each other. They knew they almost had her. Maya emerged onto a flat area near the mountain's peak, and her heart sank. It was a dead end. A cliff dropped away on 3 sides. She was trapped. She turned to face her pursuers, pistol raised. 3 men emerged from the rocks below, rifles ready. They saw her situation and smiled. One of them called out something in Pashto, probably telling her to surrender. Maya raised her pistol. Her hand shook from exhaustion, but her voice was steady. "Come and get me." The fighters started forward. Then Maya heard it, a sound like thunder growing rapidly louder. She looked up and saw the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. A Navy SEAL helicopter was coming over the ridge, coming fast and low. A MH-60 Blackhawk with door gunners leaning out, their weapons already firing. The heavy machine gun fire tore into the ground around the fighters, who scattered and ran for cover. The helicopter banked hard and came in over Maya's position. A rope dropped from the door, and a figure in full tactical gear fast roped down. A SEAL operator, huge and capable looking, carrying enough weapons for a small war. "Maya Collins?" He shouted over the rotor noise. She nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Petty Officer Jake Morrison. We're taking you home." He clipped a harness around her, gave a thumbs up to the helicopter, and suddenly they were rising, being winched up together as the door gunners continued laying down covering fire. Maya looked down at the mountain that had nearly killed her, at the fighters who'd hunted her for 3 days, at the endless rocky landscape that stretched in all directions. Then she was inside the helicopter, and someone was wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, and someone else was giving her water, and Jake Morrison was grinning at her. "You're one tough lady, Sergeant," he said. "We've been looking everywhere for you." Maya tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just started crying, huge, racking sobs that shook her whole body. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the desperate hope came pouring out. The SEAL operator didn't say anything else, just sat next to her with his hand on her shoulder as the helicopter banked and headed north toward safety. Later, Maya would learn the full story. After the initial attack, every available asset had been dedicated to finding her. Drones had searched. Satellites had looked. Ground teams had pushed into enemy territory. The SEALs had volunteered for the most dangerous part, flying into hostile mountains based on a possible signal from her radio that had been picked up. Briefly on day 2, Jake Morrison told her they'd almost given up, had done one last sweep before returning to base. Then their thermal imaging had picked up her heat signature just as the firefight started on the cliff. "Another 5 minutes and we'd have missed you," he said. "That would have been bad." "Yeah," Maya managed to croak out. "Bad. Danny survived," she learned. The surgery had been touch and go, but he'd made it. Parker recovered from his leg wound. Marcus was fine, though he felt guilty about leaving her behind. The 4 soldiers from the overturned vehicle hadn't made it. Maya spent 2 weeks in the hospital at Bagram Air Base, recovering from dehydration, exposure, and minor wounds. Every day someone new would visit. Her commanding officer, the base chaplain, other soldiers who'd heard her story. Jake Morrison came by with his SEAL team, brought her a patch from their unit. "You ever need anything," he told her, "you call. SEALs take care of their own, and after what you did out there, you're one of us." 3 weeks after her rescue, Maya was medevaced to Germany, then back to the States. She spent another month at Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, dealing with the physical aftermath: frostbite on her toes, the infected graze wound on her arm, the general trauma her body had sustained. But the physical wounds were easier than the mental ones. She had nightmares every night. The explosion, the firefight, the long, terrible days alone on the mountain. She'd wake up screaming, sure she was still trapped, still hunted. The therapist at Walter Reed told her it was normal, that she had PTSD, that it would take time. Maya didn't feel normal. She felt broken. Her mother came to visit, crying when she saw Maya for the first time. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered, holding Maya so tight it hurt. "I'm okay, Mom," Maya said, though she wasn't sure if it was true. Danny visited too, his arm in a sling, still pale but alive. "You saved my life," he told her. "You and Marcus, you got me out." "We're a team," Maya replied. "That's what teams do." 6 months later, Maya stood in a ceremony room at Fort Carson, Colorado. Her entire unit was there, along with base command and a 2-star general she'd never met. Her mother sat in the front row, tears already streaming down her face. The general stepped forward, reading from a paper. For extraordinary heroism in combat against an armed enemy, Staff Sergeant Maya Collins distinguished herself through exceptional courage under fire, displaying exceptional medical skills that saved the lives of fellow soldiers, and subsequently evading enemy forces for 3 days through hostile terrain, while wounded and without adequate supplies or support. Her actions reflect great credit upon herself, the 4th Infantry Division, and the United States Army. He pinned the Silver Star on her uniform, the nation's 3rd highest military decoration for valor. Maya stood at attention, trying not to cry, mostly failing. After the ceremony, people shook her hand and called her a hero. Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd been scared and alone and desperate, who'd gotten lucky. But maybe that's what heroes were. Not people without fear, but people who kept fighting despite it. That evening, Maya sat alone in her barracks room, looking at the Silver Star in its case. She thought about the mountain, about the fighters who'd hunted her, about the young man she'd killed to survive. She wondered if she'd ever stop seeing his face. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jake Morrison. Saw the news. "Congratulations, hero. Drinks on me next time you're in Virginia Beach." Maya smiled despite herself. She texted back, "I'll hold you to that." She set the medal on her shelf next to a photo of her team, Parker, Marcus, Danny, and the 4 soldiers who hadn't made it home. She looked at their faces, remembered their names, promised silently to never forget. Maya remained in the Army for 2 more years, though she never deployed again. She worked as a combat medic instructor at Fort Sam Houston, teaching young soldiers the skills they'd need to save lives. She told them about the importance of staying calm under fire, of proper medical procedures, of never giving up. She rarely talked about the mountain. Eventually, Maya left the army and went to nursing school using her GI Bill benefits. She graduated top of her class and took a job in a trauma center in Houston, where she saved lives every day. Car accidents, gunshot wounds, overdoses, heart attacks. The work was hard and the hours were long, but it felt right. It felt like purpose. 3 years after leaving the army, Maya got a call from a producer at a major news network. They wanted to do a story about her experience, the ambush, the escape, the dramatic rescue. They offered good money, guaranteed publicity. Maya politely declined. Some stories didn't need to be told to the world. Some experiences were too personal, too painful to turn into entertainment. But she did speak at military events occasionally, talking to young soldiers about resilience and courage. She always told them the same thing her instructor had told her. The difference between living and dying often comes down to one thing: whether you quit or keep fighting. Even when there's no logical reason to keep fighting, you fight anyway. Because miracles happen to people who refuse to quit. At one of these events, a young female soldier raised her hand. "Were you scared?" she asked. "Out there alone?" Maya didn't hesitate, terrified, every single second. But being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act despite the fear. The soldier nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. Years passed. Maya got married to another veteran, a Marine who understood the nightmares and the sudden moments of darkness. They had a daughter named her Sarah. Life moved forward as life does. But sometimes on quiet nights, Maya would stand on her back porch and look up at the stars. She'd remember the mountain, the cold, the desperate hope that had kept her moving. She'd remember the sound of helicopter blades, the sight of that SEAL fast roping down to save her. And she'd feel grateful, not just for being rescued, but for every single day since. For her daughter's laugh, for her husband's hand in hers, for the sunrise and the coffee and the ordinary beautiful moments that made up a life. She'd survived. Against all odds, against logic and reason, she'd survived. And that survival meant something. It had to mean something. Maya's story became legend in military circles. The combat medic who'd evaded enemy forces for 3 days and lived to tell about it. Young soldiers heard about her and felt inspired. Medical personnel cited her actions as examples of proper field care under impossible circumstances. But Maya herself tried not to think of it as anything special. She'd done what anyone would do, kept breathing, kept fighting, kept hoping. She'd refused to quit when quitting would have been easy. Sometimes that's all heroism is, refusing to quit. One more step, one more breath, one more heartbeat. Keep going until the rescue comes. Keep fighting until you're home. And if you're very lucky, if you refuse to give up, if you keep pushing forward against every obstacle, sometimes, just sometimes, a helicopter full of SEALs comes over the ridge and takes you home. That's what Maya had learned on the mountain. That's what she carried with her every day. Never quit. Never surrender. Keep fighting, because you never know when your rescue might appear over the horizon.